Wirecard was the PayPal of Europe. When I was there, it was actually bigger than Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank combined. It was listed on the premium DAX exchange in Germany. What a lot of people didn't know was that it was effectively just faking its books, doing all kinds of shady transactions. And yeah, it's literally stuff of movies and books. That's kind of what forced me to blow the whistle into what's now Germany's largest ever financial scandal. There's executives on the Interpol red notice list, links to Russian mafia, intelligence agencies, and so on.
It started off as a payment processor for adult entertainment and gambling, and then become like a bank killer, and then there was like a lot of scandal associated with it. You were threatened, you were bribed, or they attempted to bribe you. They also wanted to send you to a trip to Jakarta, because obviously in Singapore you can't do anything as such, but they wanted to send you to a trip to Jakarta, and you weren't sure if you were even going to come back if you went there. But what was your mindset? Despite knowing all of these risks, what made you go forward with the story and continue, and despite going up against such powerful people?
It's not in my DNA to just endlessly take hits. I wouldn't allow myself to be basically bullied. It was really a FAFO aspect to it. This is going to be one of the biggest scandals as a financial fraud that Europe has seen in decades.
The day that the story came out, what was that like for you? And then the Wirecard office was raided by the Singapore authorities. So in that moment, were you in office? Were you outside? And how did it feel?
I was very happy because the share price took a massive tanking, and it was the front page of the FT. And then 3 weeks later, Singapore raided the company, which was the only jurisdiction to have actually acted and done something about it. I wouldn't go to Russia, I wouldn't go to Jakarta even until now. So my name is Pav Gill. I'm a lawyer. I used to work in big law firms before moving to the Fintech and crypto space. And then, of course, one of the companies was Wirecard. I was the head of legal for APAC, Asia Pacific. And yeah, I think a lot of people are aware what happened there and what led me to blow the whistle on the company. Using that experience, I've now founded my own startup. So it's doing, we went to market with whistleblowing software naturally, given my background experience. And now we have kind of like become a full-fledged governance, risk, and compliance platform.
Amazing. And for people who may not be that familiar with the Wirecard scandal, could you give like a quick 1 minute, brief on what the scandal exactly was, what your role was in that, and how that kind of encouraged you to start your own company and to talk about the importance of whistleblowing?
Yeah, sure. So Wirecard was like the PayPal of Europe. Basically, it was a fintech darling of Germany. It was a very successful company. When I was there, it was actually bigger than Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank combined. It was listed on the premium DAX exchange in Germany. And what a lot of people didn't know was that it was effectively just, faking its books, doing all kinds of shady transactions. And yeah, it's literally stuff of movies and books. So I just happened to be the guy that an internal whistleblower came to. I protected that person. I investigated it. Found myself in a lot of trouble for doing that, even after I left the company. So that's kind of what forced me to blow the whistle into what's now Germany's largest ever financial scandal. There's executives on the Interpol red notice list. Links to Russian mafia, intelligence agencies, and so on.
No, it's so crazy. And actually, I was watching this TV show. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Industry, and the last season which just came out in, I think, beginning of this year. It's kind of, they say that it's loosely based on Wirecard with like shades of Revolut as well in it. So yeah, and I can kind of see the similarities, because even with the Industry, so basically there's this fictional fintech company in London where it started off as a payment processor for adult entertainment and gambling, and then went on to kind of become like a bank killer, and then there was like a lot of scandal associated with it, and yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a bit of a Wirecard there.
Yeah. So, just kind of going back to you exposing this massive scandal, how did kind of your life change after that? What was with your friends, your family? How did that get impacted?
I mean, it changed because I came out publicly a year after the company crashed. That was when the Sky documentary came out, which had me and my mom and everyone in there showing what happened to me and what led to the whistleblowing. So, then obviously everybody realized, like, okay, who's this guy? Let's speak to him. Let's find out more from his side. So, kind of like became this public persona, for lack of a better description. It's changed my life because now, people think that, okay, you need to, um, you are this like really, good whistleblower guy and all these things. So you become more careful as to what you say because people are listening. That you have like, people taking whatever you say with impact and meaning. So you got to watch what words come out of your mouth. Can't be like my younger, youthful, don't care self, right? So I think that's kind of like one way that it changed, and also from a mission perspective, it changed exactly what I was doing, which was just corporate legal work as a general counsel, and then it changed into more like impact work. What do I use my experience to do, and hopefully have companies not become Wirecard, right? Or have whistleblowers or people, just normal day-to-day people, feel that they have access to secure channels, tools that actually work, and all these things. So a lot of thought leadership, a lot of impact work, a lot of this year onwards, I want to focus more on the mental health aspects of things. As lawyers, as professionals, we don't really want to talk about that stuff, but I think it's real, given that every day in today's day and age, things are just the stress levels are just worse than inflation levels, right? So how do we manage those things?
No, for sure. And then, kind of really going back to the beginning for you, where you were actually like a law student. At the time, did you ever think that this is how your career is going to play out?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone, at least not that I'm aware, would have whistleblowing or becoming a whistleblower as a target or goal that they want to be in life. Often you just find yourself in that position, and then you are trying to navigate out of it.
No, for sure. And do you think, obviously with you when it came to the whole scandal, there was a lot of risk associated with you, even whistleblowing, you were threatened, you were bribed, or they attempted to bribe you. They also wanted to send you to a trip, to Jakarta, because obviously in Singapore you can't do anything as such. But they wanted to send you to a trip to Jakarta, and you weren't sure if you were even going to come back if you went there. But what was your mindset like, despite knowing all of these risks? What made you kind of go forward with the story and continue, and despite going up against such powerful people?
That was more in when I was in the company. And then when I left, they were still not stopping whatever they were doing. So I think um, at some point, I just need to do something because you can't just be taking hits. So it's not in my DNA to just endlessly take hits. There needs to be some kind of response. So they triggered that response, and I think that was a mistake that they made. And I think it's a mistake every company makes when they are in a that kind of scenario, right? They just push employees to become angry and want and forced to kind of like want to do something in response. And especially if you're not a clean company, I don't know why you would do that. It's just not wise in any way or strategic. You want to probably manage these people out in a better way, right? But I think from a Wirecard perspective, they were quite in a catch-22 because I was a lawyer. I wasn't just like an ordinary staff member. Um, and yeah, I think that's where they kind of just got perhaps desperate or carried away or arrogant. I don't know, a combination of those things. And they thought that they could get away with it for a long time because they had been getting away from it. I mean, with it for like 20 years.
And then, was there like a specific moment where you decided that, this is it, I need to be the person to expose them? Or was it more, like a, gradual thing where you were like, oh shit, I can't believe this is the gravity of the situation and someone needs to say something?
Yeah, I mean, as a lawyer, you have certain elements of wanting to see legal and justiciable outcomes. And I think that was a good driver for it. And of course, it's always good if there's a criminal company trying to do bad things to you to then distract them to refocus their efforts on their own problems. So that was kind of like the intention. Let's have them meaningfully, let's jujitsu their current, efforts on me to themselves and fighting their own fires. So I think that's what led to the thought process as well behind that.
And so I watched the documentary on Wirecard, the one that you mentioned, and your mom was very central to a lot of the strength behind you actually coming out and saying something against Wirecard. What do you think it is about her, or the way she raised you, or the values that she kind of instilled in you, or who she is as a person that first made you want to speak out and then hold your ground and then not bend when things got tough and you had all these risks that were, around you?
Yeah, she's a very strong person. Even though it's kind of paradoxical because she's also very kind. So there has always been, from my perspective, seeing how her kindness was taken advantage of, um, by whoever, right? Could be friends, could be in the workplace, and all those things. So I always wanted to not be in that situation, and kind of, I told myself I wouldn't allow myself to be basically bullied, right? And criminals are pretty much bullies anyway, because they'll keep on uh, doing what they can and trying to get away with it. But one day they'll just meet the wrong person that kind of like crashes it all down. And I think at some point I was like, okay, this is rubbish, right? I don't know what the company's issue is. I'm no longer there, but they just want to play this game. So it was really a FAFO kind of aspect to it. I think that's just in my DNA for some reason. So I thought I'll just activate that and see what happens. I had no idea that the scale of the wrongdoing and misconduct was to that extent. I thought it was kind of like more central, localized, some board level, involvement, but not like, okay, this is going to be one of the biggest scandals as a financial fraud that Europe has seen in decades.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've met a lot of other kind of whistleblowers as well through talking about your own story and now with the platform. Do you feel like they all share certain traits or values, or do they have something that's very similar to each of them?
I think similar is wanting to see an outcome. So there's all of them want to see the right thing happen, the outcome, the justice. So they're kind of like justice warriors in that sense. But of course, like like not all whistleblowers are that way. You would have those that kind of cross the line into blackmail, wanting payouts, wanting to pretty much tell the company if you don't, you know, put me in a good position, then I will take you down. So I think there's all these different blurred lines. And then there's, of course, people that aren't really in a whistleblowing scenario. They're more of in an employment scenario where there's redundancies potentially, or they feel they've been harassed or bullied or discriminated against. So I think the word whistleblowing these days is very widely and broadly used. We need to narrow it down. I think whistleblowing should only deal with real serious things, right? Like fraud, bribery, criminal offenses, um, that kind of wrongdoing instead of like what would be more grievance type
Hmm.
wrongdoings. So, and sometimes it's not even a whistleblowing. You just want to be able to raise an issue, right? For example, your boss may be using his wife's company as a vendor, but well, that's obviously uncomfortable. It's a conflict. You may not be very much focused on that, but you may be more focused on the fact that the company as a vendor has real product defects associated with it. Now, how do you raise this issue without coming into conflict with your boss, right? Because the internal audit team may want to know because it's a business risk, it's an operational risk, customers will be impacted. So being able to create an atmosphere where people can actually raise that safely without the fear of a retaliation or spotlight on themselves, I think that's where companies need to also think about these things, and cultures need to be set in that way that's more positive. Because at the end of the day, every single thing that an employee is raising needs to be looked at, and it's frankly in the company's or the organization's best interest to do so, because knowledge is power. While of course not everything is a Wirecard or it's an issue, at least being able to know about it first is where I think strategic or wisdom-driven organizations, as I would call them, would structure themselves.
No, for sure. And so, I work in crypto, which is obviously an industry where all of this is rampant. Like, I think it's just per capita, on per capita basis, just has a higher density of almost like not even fraud, but like I think very young founders with a lot of money and very inexperienced founders who build companies that have crazy valuations, and then they're kind of stuck in the cycle of having to justify those valuations, showing some kind of revenue and keeping the token up. But I know a lot of my friends who also work in crypto know that these companies are not really legit, or there's always some issue. What would be the best way for them to kind of come out and talk about it when, especially with something like crypto, which doesn't even really have HR, maybe they have like some legal contractors that work for them, but not really like a full legal team. What is like the best way for these people to come out and kind of share their grievance with the world or even within the company?
Yeah, I think funnily crypto is becoming more and more regulated now.
Yeah.
So it's harder for these organizations or crypto fintechs in that sense to operate without some kind of supervisory or regulatory supervision, right? So I would think the best way, and this is like regardless of industry, is to document things and flag them in a very sensible manner as like a risk, I would say, or flagging like, okay, there's a transaction monitoring gap here, there is this kind of compliance workflow gap, how do we fix it, and so on. So once they do that internal aspect, if they can always wait and see what is the response. And then, of course, the question is, would the response now, based on their job scope, start to impact them or put them in a risk? So if you're in compliance, you're in legal, um, would your job now start to become at risk if something goes wrong? And I think that's where different questions need to be asked, right? Like, should I remain at this company? How do I navigate out of these things? It's quite complicated. I think crypto is a cowboy industry as a whole. I would say most of it. I've been in that space. I've been a GC, a general counsel of a crypto exchange. I was a fan. I'm no longer a fan of the space. I think there are very, very limited use cases. Of course, blockchain as a technology, which everyone hyped about and tries to deflect attention to. It's like, no, 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 look at the blockchain. Yes, nobody's doubting the technology, but we are now talking about use cases, right? You have meme coins, you have altcoins, what Twitter calls shit coins, and all these things. Oh, sorry, X now calls all that stuff. It's just a hype. It's just a lot of it is pump and dump schemes. I mean, if you see what's happening in the US, for example, there are clear pump and dump aspects there. There's no accountability. Very rarely do you see that happen. You had, the world's biggest crypto exchange, and I don't want to go into big detail about that, but you saw the sanction was only a few months in jail, despite billions being involved. So where's the stick in these things, right? What exactly is going on? Who's interested in keeping this going? I think these are like the wider issues that are in play. So even for the that more Gen Z scandal with the hop tour girl on X, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the most obvious pump and dump scheme, and there's like no accountability, right? A person literally became a multimillionaire, um, and is just walking around twerking now, as of the last video that I saw yesterday on X. So where's the accountability in all these things? It's just becoming a joke at this point.
No, for sure. And then especially I think when you also have politics involved in it and they're kind of complicit in it. Or I would it's just a guess for me that they're complicit in it. And then you also have potentially media that's also complicit. It just becomes so difficult for say like a small employee to go up against the system almost. But what really fascinates me about your story is that that's actually what you did. You were just one employee, and of course, with the help of a couple more people, but still not big enough to go up against, the founders of Wirecard, but also the German government in a way, because Wirecard was Germany's pride almost. And then at the same time, once you kind of discover that this is going wrong, you also have to be loud enough for people to hear you, which is, again, really difficult. Like, you have to engage the right kind of media, the right kind of reporters, making sure that, it's a big enough story. And of course, with Wirecard, you were able to do it with the FT, which is the biggest financial magazine or publication. But when you were kind of going through that mental model of, okay, I need to expose this, what was the exact kind of framework that you used where you were like, okay, we need to engage this journalist, we need support from this person? What was that exact kind of model that you kind of mentally at least prepared for yourself in the moment?
It's all about speed. So you want to have the right reputable media outlet on your side to investigate. Because once they investigate, it usually forces regulators to act and enforcement agencies to act really quickly. Because you could just send like a whistleblowing report to a regulator, for example, or file something somewhere, but you don't have control over the speed of that thing. They may be getting reports like hundreds of them, right, every month. Who's looking at that? How are they prioritizing it? Would it be filed away for a few years? So I think having like a media outlet talk about it as a scandal or start to investigate from a investigative journalism standpoint was the strategy, and it worked. It's not very easy because journalists also, like regulators, probably get hundreds of these every week. How do they choose what cases, what because a lot of people are emotionally driven. People are very different as well. What is an invoice error to one person may be a massive fraud potential to another. So we need to, they also need to sift through all these things. And then litigation risk is the biggest for whistleblowers, as well as for journalists and stuff, right? Because companies would straight away send a cease and desist. They will sue. For people who are whistleblowers, do you have the money to defend yourself? Most of us don't. And then from a journalist standpoint, is also the same. There's legal involved, there's evidential, cross-checking, validation, and all these reputational elements involved. So it's quite a complicated space. I think going back also to the previous point on crypto, I think this also means that it's all systemic in a way where wrongdoing happens. There are multiple players that would have enabled it. I think in the crypto space, you also need to look at venture cap funds. What is the level of due diligence that they're doing? The problem is also what is the incentive to do that much of a due diligence? Because if you're a VC, you're investing in a normal startup that's not crypto, you would then be aiming for returns over a period of time, right? Say 4 to 5 years, maybe. Whereas if you're in a token, I mean, you're investing in a crypto firm, you probably get issued tokens. When the first token listing happens, you would have recovered a lot of that amount. You would have broken even quite fast and all these things. So I think incentives also kind of financial incentives play a huge role in a lot of these factors. And of course, in large scale frauds, you would have multiple internal and external actors that would have enabled this to happen, whether it's the external auditors, the control functions in there, the board, the management team, law enforcement, everything. It's just a whole bunch of different actors that would have played different roles in either shutting their eyes or enabling these kinds of issues to have from becoming very small to becoming like super big and exploding.
No, for sure. And so, again, to kind of go back to just slicing this question a little bit more. So, when you kind of went up to or you kind of engaged the reporters from FT, there was still like some lead up time between when you kind of exposed the story versus when you published them. I'm sure they were also getting clearances from their legal team, making sure the story is legitimate and all of that. What was that wait period like for you, where you were like, I think it was like 5 months. So what was that time like for you? Was it really scary, or in that moment, like how were you feeling?
I think it's more frustrating because you don't have access to FT's info and progress, right? What are they doing? Are they even working on this? When is it going to be published? When is this going to happen? So I think this is the most frustrating bit, is the wait. Um, and yeah, it's again about not being able to control the outcome. And of course, outfits like the FT are super professional. They would also not be giving you information fully for good reason. Like, there's always a risk with the whistleblower end of shorting the stock and financially incentivizing himself in the process, doing unethical stuff on the side. So I think there's all these different um, hurdles and walls that exist in these situations that from a person's perspective that wants to see justice, you're like, okay, when is this going to happen, right? It's like really waiting for example, like school exam results. You're like, just every day is like a super long day, and you're just like waiting for that to happen, distracting yourself, trying to make time fly. um, yeah, so I would say that's the biggest mental challenge.
And then, the day that the story came out, what was that like for you? And then the Wirecard office was raided by the Singapore authorities. So in that moment, were you in office? Were you outside? And how did it feel?
No, I left after I whistleblew was after I left Wirecard.
Okay.
And then there were 4 months after that, between that leaving and the FT's article. I don't know, 4 to 5 months, around there. So yeah, I was very happy because the share price took a massive tanking, and it was the front page of the FT. And then 3 weeks later, Singapore raided the company, which was the only regulator globally to have actually acted. Sorry, not regulator, but jurisdiction to have actually acted and done something about it. So yeah, I'm proud that Singapore actually acted. Of course, then subsequent to that, there were challenges because of jurisdictional issues. There are limits to what one jurisdiction can do. If the individuals are overseas in another place, what's the cooperation level and so on, right? Yeah, and of course, then it becomes frustrating to a different way because you're now seeing the company blatantly lie, and many things happen between that period, where between the first exposure and then the final crash of the company.
No, for sure. And then after that, did you still feel like there were risks to you personally in terms of your safety, freedom, and things like that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't go to Russia. I wouldn't go to Jakarta even until now. I'm not sure how what's happening. Is it a good idea? I assume not. I'm told maybe better not to, which is kind of like a pity in its own way. But I haven't really thought much about the risks involved from a physical standpoint. I think I'm just kind of the person that deals with something when it happens. Um, like, I don't sit and hypothesize about stuff in general.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And then I think the last couple of questions that I have for you is, if you had to give advice to, say, someone who is in law school right now about working as a lawyer in this kind of day and age, this climate, what would that look like?
I would say, like, find a good mentor from the industry, someone who's seen it, has his war wounds, has that wisdom. Because a lot of times, what you learn in law school, you don't see, or you don't really, or put it the other way around. What happens in the workspace, what you learn on the job, you don't really learn in law school, right? How do you navigate ethical scenarios in an in-house setting, in a corporate setting, and all these things? How do so having a good um, mentor is very key. I would say go find one. Um, I wouldn't say be a sycophant and suck up to that person, but just be like, just to see how this person has navigated all these real life challenges. And I think have a good support group um, that's got Chatham House rules, as they call them, just discuss things without breaking client confidentiality and all that stuff. And I think, if you have a good community, you've got a good advisory circle, good mentors, that's what I would recommend for the youth.
Did you have like a very meaningful mentor figure in your life who you say that was key to your success?
I wouldn't say so. Uh, Not necessarily. Like I can't pinpoint one person in particular. I think it was just like a blend of my own experience. I mean, I've seen like a lot of stuff during my legal career as well. I've also seen multiple crashes of the economy uh, and the fallouts from them, whether it's a subprime, it was the Asian crisis, and all these things. So I think people born during my generation have kind of had, I don't know if it's a benefit, but they've had the ability to go through various interesting and novel ups and downs, whether it was the advent of tech, computers, internet, smartphones, to even navigating like financial instruments which then exist, various crashes, seeing all the crazy stuff basically from a very different world where we had physical phones, black and white TVs, Michael Jackson, to what's happening now, right? So I think that was the experience from a societal, environmental standpoint, kind of like hardened us in a way, which I don't it's very different from what's happening now. So because the current generation may not have that, I think it's good to kind of like hang with some of us folks. I would say, or if you can find the right ones, hopefully, and then just be wise. I mean, at the end of the day, just protect yourself, right? Be a sensible, wise human being. Every action that you do, just ask yourself, would it be able to make you sleep well at night?
Yeah, I think that's a great like way to check yourself. And I think, no, even for me, like I have a mentor, and I think she's been so instrumental to who become as a person. She's been in my life almost 7 or 8 years now. So right when I was in my last year in uni until now. So it's been, I see what you mean about having someone who you can kind of look up to at the same time, who gives you good advice, and you can rely on them. And then the last question that I have for you is there anything that you're particularly excited for within, your own personal industry or in your own life for 2026, 2027?
Um, I think I'm just like focused on the startup. I
Mhm.
think it's doing very well, thankfully. I never thought I'll have a startup in that sense, and it's quite a shift from being a lawyer to a entrepreneur. But seeing how customers are actually adopting from all over the world, I think that's quite reassuring. Being able to use an experience, a lived experience, putting it into something tangible, and then seeing other people actually adopt that, I think that's quite a exciting thing. So now I'm just seeing like, I mean, while navigating the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, also navigating the startup and making sure that we become a success. So at least then I'll have some form of legacy, right? I could say like, yes, this thing happened to me. This is what I did with the thing, and hopefully, even if anything happens to me down the line, I would have left something behind, which hopefully proved useful for everybody out there.
Is that important to you to have like a legacy?
I mean, legacy is important in various ways to different people. Some want to have kids and have that kind of legacy. They want to have a bloodline and stuff. And then others want to have a legacy in the sense of their professional life, right? Want to be known as like a top lawyer, a very respected person in a specific field. Um, for me, it's more of just being able to have said, like, look, uh, this is how you navigate negative, very bad scenarios and turn them into a positive. So I think it comes more from an inspirational element and an execution element, and then that's like pretty much it. I don't think there's. If I could do that, I think I'll just be happy. So yeah, I'm not like I don't want to be like I don't have like ambitions like some people maybe like Elon Musk and all those would have, right, on that kind of grandeur and scale. I think it's just on my own personal story and how I can, if that helps anybody out there, in any way, even in a tangential way, I think then that's great. It's good enough for me, and that would be what my legacy would define.
I love that. So yeah, those were all the questions I had. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Off the Record. If you like this episode, like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps the podcast grow. You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.